But what if it's not just the usual confusion of waking up from a dream or the fog of sleep? You suddenly speak a language you've never heard before, a language that shouldn't even exist anymore. It's not a joke. It's not a prank. And it's not some kind of viral challenge. It's something far stranger, far deeper, and way more mysterious than anything you've ever encountered. And this isn't happening in a movie or a book, it's happening right now, to a regular teenager named Jacob. This isn't just a weird story. This is a puzzle that will leave you questioning everything about language, history, and the unknown parts of the human mind. You're about to step into something that will challenge your understanding of what's possible. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll have a theory of your own. Jacob, an average 16-year-old from a small town, wakes up one morning in his bed, only to find himself speaking in a language that no one, his parents, friends, or even his teachers, can recognize. At first, it's almost like a joke to him. He laughs it off, assuming he's just still groggy from sleep. But then, it doesn't stop. His speech is coherent, fluid even, but it's not English or any language that anyone can identify. In fact, it's not a modern language at all. It's something older. Much older. Something that seems to have been forgotten by history itself. Imagine the confusion, the panic, the disbelief. How could this happen? Where did this language come from? And why him? This is where things get even stranger. Jacob isn't alone in this. Enter Mrs. Hargrave, his high school history teacher, who's as curious as she is brilliant. She's not just any teacher, she's a historian with a deep love for ancient civilizations and dead languages. She has spent decades studying languages that no one speaks anymore, languages that are nothing more than whispers in the pages of old dusty textbooks and forgotten manuscripts. When Jacob's condition makes its way to her attention, she's immediately drawn to it. But what she uncovers will lead them both into a world of secrets and mysteries that neither of them is prepared for. Mrs. Hargrave is as fascinated as she is cautious, sensing that there's something far bigger going on here than just a teenage boy spouting gibberish. The more she investigates, the deeper the rabbit hole goes, and soon, she's uncovering a web of historical connections and unsolved mysteries that no one has dared to explore before. As you're watching this video, you're probably asking yourself, how is this even possible? What's going on with Jacob? What ancient language could he possibly be speaking? Well, here's the thing: everything you think you know about history and language is about to be flipped on its head. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll be asking even more questions. This isn't just about an unexplained phenomenon, it's about discovering the hidden patterns of the past that continue to shape our world today. I know you're probably itching to know what happens next. But before I tell you, let me ask you, have you ever felt like there's something more to the world around you, something beneath the surface that no one talks about? Maybe you've looked at an old map and wondered who lived there centuries ago, or read a story about a long-lost civilization and thought, what if there's still something we don't know about them? What if I told you Jacob's mysterious language has ties to an ancient civilization that's barely been touched by mainstream history? A civilization that once held knowledge so powerful, it could change everything we thought we knew about the human mind and its potential. That's where this story is headed, and believe me, you won't want to miss it. But here's the kicker. As Jacob's strange language continues, he starts to exhibit signs of knowing things he couldn't possibly know. His memories of this ancient language seem to unlock something inside of him. But what happens next will leave you questioning reality itself. Was this just a freak accident? Or is there something much larger at play, something that's been hidden for centuries, waiting for the right person to unlock it? And what if Jacob is more than just a random teenager who woke up speaking a forgotten language? This story is not just about an odd event in one boy's life, it's about a journey into the unknown. It's about unraveling a mystery that connects the present with the distant past, one that will make you think twice about everything you've ever learned in school, everything you've ever been told about the limits of human knowledge and history. What if the key to understanding who we are as a species lies in something we've long forgotten? What if the truth has been staring us in the face all along, hidden in plain sight? And as for Jacob, well, he's not alone in this. The more he learns about his new abilities, the more people from his past start to play a role in this mystery, and the more Mrs. Hargrave uncovers, the closer they get to a shocking discovery that could change history forever. But, here's the thing, Not everyone wants this secret to come to light. There are people who would go to extreme lengths to make sure these truths stay buried. People who don't want you, or anyone else, to learn what Jacob might be about to reveal. And let's just say, things are about to get a whole lot more complicated for both Jacob and Mrs. Hargrave. So, are you ready to dive deeper? To find out what's really going on with Jacob? The answers are all here, waiting to be discovered, but you've got to stick around till the very end to piece them together. You're not going to want to miss the shocking twist that's coming next. Trust me, this is going to blow your mind. Keep watching, because the mystery of Jacob's forgotten language is just the beginning. Stay tuned for the next chapter, where everything you thought you knew will be turned upside down. And remember, the truth isn't always what it seems. Jacob's life had always been pretty normal, or at least as normal as it gets for a high school sophomore in a small town. He went to school every day, hung out with friends on weekends, and kept a low profile. His days were mostly spent doing what any average teenager does, balancing homework, playing video games, hanging out at the local diner, and avoiding too many awkward run-ins with his crush, Emma. But over the past few weeks, something had been different. Jacob wasn't quite sure how to put it, but there had been a subtle shift, like a feeling in the air that something wasn't right. Maybe it was the strange dreams he'd been having, a mix of vivid, almost too real scenes from places and times he didn't recognize. Or maybe it was the odd sense that his body didn't quite feel like his own sometimes. He had chalked it up to stress, school pressure, or maybe even a growing feeling of alienation as he got older, but deep down, he couldn't shake the idea that something was coming. But, what if it's not just the usual confusion of waking up from a dream or the fog of sleep? You suddenly speak a language you've never heard before, a language that shouldn't even exist anymore. It's not a joke. It's not a prank. And it's not some kind of viral challenge. It's something far stranger, far deeper, and way more mysterious than anything you've ever encountered. And this isn't happening in a movie or a book, it's happening right now, to a regular teenager named Jacob. This isn't just a weird story. This is a puzzle that will leave you questioning everything about language, history, and the unknown parts of the human mind. You're about to step into something that will challenge your understanding of what's possible. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll have a theory of your own. Jacob, an average 16-year-old from a small town, wakes up one morning in his bed, only to find himself speaking in a language that no one, his parents, friends, or even his teachers, can recognize. At first, it's almost like a joke to him. He laughs it off, assuming he's just still groggy from sleep. But then, it doesn't stop. His speech is coherent, fluid even, but it's not English or any language that anyone can identify. In fact, it's not a modern language at all. It's something older. Much older. Something that seems to have been forgotten by history itself. Imagine the confusion, the panic, the disbelief. How could this happen? Where did this language come from? And why him? This is where things get even stranger. Jacob isn't alone in this. Enter Mrs. Hargrave, his high school history teacher, who's as curious as she is brilliant. She's not just any teacher, she's a historian with a deep love for ancient civilizations and dead languages. She has spent decades studying languages that no one speaks anymore, languages that are nothing more than whispers in the pages of old dusty textbooks and forgotten manuscripts. When Jacob's condition makes its way to her attention, she's immediately drawn to it. But what she uncovers will lead them both into a world of secrets and mysteries that neither of them is prepared for. Mrs. Hargrave is as fascinated as she is cautious, sensing that there's something far bigger going on here than just a teenage boy spouting gibberish. The more she investigates, the deeper the rabbit hole goes, and soon, she's uncovering a web of historical connections and unsolved mysteries that no one has dared to explore before. As you're watching this video, you're probably asking yourself, how is this even possible? What's going on with Jacob? What ancient language could he possibly be speaking? Well, here's the thing: everything you think you know about history and language is about to be flipped on its head. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll be asking even more questions. This isn't just about an unexplained phenomenon, it's about discovering the hidden patterns of the past that continue to shape our world today. I know you're probably itching to know what happens next. But before I tell you, let me ask you, have you ever felt like there's something more to the world around you, something beneath the surface that no one talks about. Maybe you've looked at an old map and wondered who lived there centuries ago, or read a story about a long-lost civilization and thought, what if there's still something we don't know about them? What if I told you Jacob's mysterious language has ties to an ancient civilization that's barely been touched by mainstream history? A civilization that once held knowledge so powerful, it could change everything we thought we knew about the human mind and its potential. That's where this story is headed, and believe me, you won't want to miss it. But here's the kicker. As Jacob's strange language continues, he starts to exhibit signs of knowing things he couldn't possibly know. His memories of this ancient language seem to unlock something inside of him. But what happens next will leave you questioning reality itself. Was this just a freak accident? Or is there something much larger at play, something that's been hidden for centuries, waiting for the right person to unlock it? And what if Jacob is more than just a random teenager who woke up speaking a forgotten language? This story is not just about an odd event in one boy's life, it's about a journey into the unknown. It's about unraveling a mystery that connects the present with the distant past, one that will make you think twice about everything you've ever learned in school, everything you've ever been told about the limits of human knowledge and history. What if the key to understanding who we are as a species lies in something we've long forgotten? What if the truth has been staring us in the face all along, hidden in plain sight? And as for Jacob, well, he's not alone in this. The more he learns about his new abilities, the more people from his past start to play a role in this mystery, and the more Mrs. Hargrave uncovers, the closer they get to a shocking discovery that could change history forever. But, here's the thing, not everyone wants this secret to come to light. There are people who would go to extreme lengths to make sure these truths stay buried. People who don't want you, or anyone else, to learn what Jacob might be about to reveal. And let's just say, things are about to get a whole lot more complicated for both Jacob and Mrs. Hargrave. So, are you ready to dive deeper? To find out what's really going on with Jacob? The answers are all here, waiting to be discovered, but you've got to stick around till the very end to piece them together. You're not going to want to miss the shocking twist that's coming next. Trust me, this is going to blow your mind. Keep watching, because the mystery of Jacob's forgotten language is just the beginning. Stay tuned for the next chapter, where everything you thought you knew will be turned upside down. And remember, the truth isn't always what it seems. Jacob's life had always been pretty normal, or at least as normal as it gets for a high school sophomore in a small town. He went to school every day, hung out with friends on weekends, and kept a low profile. His days were mostly spent doing what any average teenager does, balancing homework, playing video games, hanging out at the local diner, and avoiding too many awkward run-ins with his crush, Emma. But over the past few weeks, something had been different. Jacob wasn't quite sure how to put it, but there had been a subtle shift, like a feeling in the air that something wasn't right. Maybe it was the strange dreams he'd been having, a mix of vivid, almost too real scenes from places and times he didn't recognize. Or maybe it was the odd sense that his body didn't quite feel like his own sometimes. He had chalked it up to stress, school pressure, or maybe even a growing feeling of alienation as he got older, but deep down, he couldn't shake the idea that something was coming. The first incident came out of nowhere. Jacob had been hanging out with his best friend, Matt, after school one Wednesday, sitting in the park and talking about their plans for the weekend. The conversation had been normal, talking about movies, the latest trends, and which gaming console was better, but then something strange happened. As Jacob was in the middle of a sentence, trying to make a joke, he suddenly felt like he couldn't remember how to finish the sentence. His lips stopped moving, his mind blank. And then, without any warning, words began to spill out of his mouth in a language he'd never heard before. It wasn't gibberish or some random string of syllables, it was like the words just came to him, as if his brain was pulling them from somewhere deep within, somewhere ancient. The sound was foreign, sharp, and rhythmic. Matt, who had been laughing along, went silent in an instant, his eyes wide with confusion and fear. Jacob's heart pounded in his chest as he realized he wasn't speaking English. He froze, feeling a sense of dread rise in him. Matt didn't say a word, his face twisted in a mix of disbelief and concern. It wasn't until Jacob finally stopped speaking that he could find the words to ask, "Dude, what did you just say?" Jacob had no idea how to respond. He tried to explain it away, maybe he had just gotten a weird cough or was out of breath, but Matt wasn't buying it. He insisted Jacob repeat what he'd just said, but Jacob could only shake his head. The words didn't come back to him, as if they'd vanished into thin air the moment they were spoken. At that point, Jacob had brushed it off, writing it off as stress or exhaustion. But things only got stranger after that. Over the next few days, it happened again. And again. The words would just come to him, unbidden, in the middle of conversations, in class, during quiet moments at home. Sometimes, they were complete sentences, and sometimes they were just fragments, bits and pieces of a language that seemed to grow more familiar to him the longer he heard it. But he couldn't understand it. No matter how much he tried to focus, to figure out what he was saying, it was like his brain was operating on two levels, one that understood English and one that understood something else entirely. Jacob hadn't told anyone at first, not even his parents. He was scared. He didn't know what to make of it, and besides, what could he say? That he was suddenly speaking a forgotten language from the past. It sounded insane, even to him. But his mind kept spinning, trying to grasp at anything that could explain this. He went to his history teacher, Mrs. Hargrave, the next day, after he'd overheard some older students talking about an ancient language seminar she was giving at the library. The idea of an ancient language clicked in his mind. Maybe she knew something that could help him understand what was happening. Mrs. Hargrave had always been a bit of an enigma to the other students. She was brilliant, no doubt, and always ready to dive deep into the mysteries of history, but she had a way of making her students feel like they were just scratching the surface of something far bigger. Jacob had always been interested in her classes, finding her passion for the past contagious. She had a way of making you think there were secrets buried just beneath the surface of everything you learned. So, after class one day, Jacob approached her, unsure of how to bring up what was happening. But when he did, Mrs. Hargrave listened intently, her eyes narrowing with interest as Jacob described the strange words he was speaking. "I've never heard of anything like this," she had said, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "But that doesn't mean it's impossible. Some things are buried deep in history, Jacob. Languages disappear, they evolve, and sometimes they resurface in unexpected ways. Maybe you're tapping into something old." It was then that Jacob realized she wasn't looking at him like he was crazy, she was looking at him like he might be the key to something she'd been studying for years. She seemed as eager to understand what was happening as he was. But as the days passed, Jacob began to notice something strange about Mrs. Hargrave's behavior. She started showing up at his house, unexpectedly, asking questions about his dreams, his experiences, and even his family history. It was subtle at first, a few comments here and there, but it soon became clear, Mrs. Hargrave was digging into his past. Not just his immediate family, but his ancestors. Why? That was a question Jacob didn't ask out loud. He didn't want to seem paranoid, but something about her focus felt too intense, too specific. It wasn't just about the language. There was something deeper she was after. And then there was Emma. Jacob had always kept his feelings for her quiet. He wasn't one to make big moves or create awkward situations. But lately, Emma had been more curious about him than usual. At first, he thought it was just because of the strange things happening with his speech, but she'd been asking about his family, his background, even his childhood memories. Why now? It didn't add up. It was like everyone around him was suddenly interested in something he couldn't quite grasp. And then, one day, Emma dropped a bombshell. She mentioned something about an old family legend her grandfather had told her, a story about a forgotten language and a hidden legacy that ran in the bloodline of certain families. The way she said it, it was as if she was testing him, waiting for him to react. Now Jacob didn't know who to trust. Was Emma just messing with him? Was Mrs. Hargrave really trying to help, or was she more interested in something Jacob didn't fully understand? And then there was the creeping feeling that something else was lurking in the background. Someone, maybe more than one person, was watching, waiting for Jacob to unlock whatever it was that had been awakened inside him. But who? And why? The deeper Jacob dug, the more he realized that everything around him, his strange new ability, the people who seemed too interested in him, the cryptic warnings, was part of a puzzle. A puzzle he couldn't solve alone. The answers were out there, but the more Jacob searched, the more he realized that finding them might cost him more than he was willing to lose. Every time he thought he was getting closer, a new layer of secrecy emerged. And the clock was ticking because somewhere, someone, was desperate to make sure Jacob never figured it out. As Jacob dug deeper into the mystery, it became clear that the more he uncovered, the more difficult it was to find answers. Every step forward felt like it was met with 2 steps back, as though there was an invisible force at play, working against him. It started innocently enough, finding old books at the library, scouring online archives, and even asking around about any connection to ancient languages and forgotten legacies. But soon, the cracks began to appear. It wasn't long before Jacob noticed things missing: important notes he'd written, books he'd checked out, even a few of Mrs. Hargrave's old lecture tapes that he had borrowed for reference. At first, he chalked it up to his own forgetfulness, but when he realized that key pieces of evidence kept vanishing, he couldn't ignore the creeping feeling that something or someone was trying to keep him from uncovering the truth. It wasn't just random chance anymore, it was starting to feel like someone was actively sabotaging his investigation. And worse, every time he thought he was close to finding something concrete, he was met with dead ends. But it wasn't just the missing evidence that started to rattle Jacob. The more he learned, the more he encountered people warning him to stop. It was subtle at first. A comment from a random student in the hallway about staying out of trouble, a strange phone call that hung up when he answered, and even an eerie email from an anonymous address with a single line: "Stop digging. You're not ready for the truth." Jacob's instinct told him to ignore it, but the cold, foreboding feeling that had settled in his gut was hard to shake. There was something bigger at play here, something dark, and it wasn't just his imagination. But who was behind it? Was it someone at school? Maybe Matt, his longtime friend, had started to feel uncomfortable with everything that was going on. Or maybe it was Mrs. Hargrave. She seemed too involved in Jacob's life now. She had been so insistent on helping him find answers, but her constant appearances at his house, her sudden interest in his family history, her probing questions, was it possible she had an ulterior motive? Things came to a head one evening when Jacob decided to meet Mrs. Hargrave after school. She had contacted him, asking to meet in person to discuss something important. He was nervous but also excited to finally get some answers. The meeting took place in the school's old library, the one that smelled of dust and forgotten pages. As he sat there, waiting for Mrs. Hargrave to arrive, Jacob couldn't help but notice something strange. The library felt emptier than usual. It was quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that felt unnatural. When Mrs. Hargrave arrived, she was acting different. Her usual calm and composed demeanor was replaced by a subtle tension. She barely made eye contact with Jacob, her movements stiff, like she was holding something back. "Jacob," she said slowly, her voice almost a whisper, "I need to warn you about something. This investigation, it's more dangerous than you realize. There are forces at play here that you don't understand." Jacob's heart raced as he leaned in, desperate for the truth. But just as she opened her mouth to explain further, the lights in the library flickered. The room grew colder, and the air seemed to thicken. Mrs. Hargrave's expression turned pale, and she hurriedly grabbed her things, muttering something about needing to leave. Before Jacob could say anything, she was gone, leaving him with nothing but more questions than answers. The whole thing felt off. Jacob could sense it, there was something she wasn't telling him. He left the library that day feeling more unsettled than ever. The next day, he went to her office, hoping to catch her and ask her what she had meant by that cryptic warning, but when he arrived, her office door was locked. The blinds were drawn. He knocked, but there was no answer. It was like she had vanished without a trace. He waited for hours, but nothing. A strange sinking feeling hit him. This wasn't the first time something odd had happened involving her. It felt like she was avoiding him, or worse, hiding something. It didn't stop there. The very next day, Jacob discovered something that shook him to his core. His mother, who had always been supportive but distant when it came to family history, had suddenly become unnervingly silent on the subject. She had never talked much about her side of the family, but Jacob had always assumed it was just a touch of embarrassment about the past. But when he started pressing her for more information, something in her changed. Her eyes grew distant, like she was remembering something she didn't want to. And when he mentioned the strange language again, she quickly dismissed it, telling him not to worry about it and to focus on his schoolwork. It wasn't just a mother's concern, there was fear in her eyes. And that fear made Jacob uneasy. He didn't want to push her, but something told him there was a hidden piece of the puzzle here, something buried in his own family's history that no one wanted him to know. Then, in a moment of frustration, Jacob did something he had promised himself he wouldn't. He went through his parents' old belongings, looking for anything that might explain their strange behavior. What he found was a dusty box, hidden away in the attic. Inside, there were old letters, family records, and strange documents in languages he couldn't even begin to understand. But what caught his eye was an old, tattered map with cryptic markings, resembling a language he had seen before, the same language he had been speaking. His heart skipped a beat as he traced the faded ink with his fingers. The map seemed to point to a location not far from their town, a place he had never heard of before. What was this? Why had his parents kept it hidden? And why did his mother look so terrified when he asked her about it? As Jacob was trying to process what he had just uncovered, he received another unexpected visit, this time from Emma. She showed up at his house, her face pale, her eyes wide with something between concern and fear. "Jacob, you need to stop," she whispered urgently, glancing over her shoulder like she was being watched. "I didn't want to get involved, but this is bigger than you think. There are people who don't want this truth to come out. Your family, my family, there's a reason we're connected to this. And you're going to get hurt if you keep digging." Jacob felt his pulse race. Emma's warning hit him like a ton of bricks. What did she know? Why was she so afraid? Was she really trying to help him, or was she trying to cover something up? The tension in the air was palpable. It was as if everyone around him, his mother, Mrs. Hargrave, Emma, was hiding something. But what? What was the secret they were all trying to protect? And then, just as Jacob was about to ask Emma more, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and what he saw made his blood run cold. It was a message from an unknown number. "You're getting too close. Leave this alone, or there will be consequences." It wasn't from anyone he knew, nor was it a number he recognized. His hands shook as he opened the message, the text simple but unsettling: "You're not safe anymore. Stop digging, or you'll regret it." The words burned into his mind, each letter a warning, a threat. The message was chilling in its directness, its clarity, but it was the realization that it was sent from someone who clearly knew where he was, what he was doing, that struck the hardest. The paranoia that had been building up inside him finally spilled over. He was being watched. Someone had been watching him for days, maybe longer. It wasn't just an unsettling feeling anymore, it was a reality he couldn't ignore. He wasn't just involved in something dangerous, he was the target. Jacob's world felt like it was closing in on him, each new message, each new clue, driving him further into a state of panic. He tried to reach out to Matt, but the few texts he sent went unanswered, and when he finally called, the line went dead after a few rings. It was like Matt had disappeared, just like Emma. They were all vanishing, one by one, and Jacob was left alone, drowning in questions with no answers. His parents hadn't been much help either. Every time he tried to talk to them about the growing threats, they dismissed it as stress, as paranoia, but Jacob knew they weren't telling him the full truth. There was something they weren't saying, something they had hidden from him for years. It was in their eyes, in their refusal to discuss the past, that Jacob knew they were involved somehow. But how? What were they hiding from him? Everything seemed to be converging on one horrifying possibility. The answers Jacob was desperately searching for were buried in his own bloodline. It wasn't just the language or the ancient group, it was something more personal, something connected to his very existence. He was more deeply entangled in this than he ever imagined, and the more he tried to uncover, the more danger he seemed to attract. The fear, the weight of it all, began to feel suffocating. What had started as an innocent quest to understand a mysterious language had spiraled into something far more dangerous, something that threatened not only his safety but the lives of those closest to him. But the worst part was the growing sense of isolation. Jacob couldn't trust anyone, not Matt, not Emma, not even his parents. The deeper he dug, the more everyone seemed to be hiding something, and the more people seemed to disappear or become unreachable. Each unanswered phone call, each missing person, felt like a sign that he was being drawn into something so vast and dark that escape was impossible. The messages kept coming, each one more sinister than the last. You're running out of time. Don't look for answers. You won't like what you find. And with every message, every moment that passed, Jacob could feel the grip of fear tightening around him. The feeling that he was being watched, that someone was always just behind him, waiting for the right moment to strike, became more real with every passing day. He could no longer go about his life pretending everything was normal. The weight of the mystery had become too heavy to ignore, and now, the people he had trusted the most were either gone or unreachable. Jacob had no choice but to keep pushing forward, to find the answers, even if it meant risking everything. But as the walls closed in tighter and tighter, Jacob couldn't shake the sinking feeling that whatever truth he was about to uncover would be far worse than anything he could imagine. And as the phone buzzed again, with yet another anonymous threat, Jacob realized that the danger was no longer distant, it was here, and it was coming for him. The tension in Jacob's mind had been building for days. The anonymous threats, the missing people, the cryptic messages that seemed to come from all directions, it felt like a web closing in on him, and the more he fought to break free, the tighter it became. Every time he thought he was getting closer to understanding the truth, something would shift, pulling him deeper into confusion. His paranoia was now at a boiling point, each phone call and text message only adding more weight to his growing dread. But nothing could prepare him for the moment when everything changed, the moment when a single conversation turned his entire world upside down. It happened on a rainy Thursday evening. Jacob had just returned home, exhausted and mentally drained from days of relentless digging, when he found a message waiting for him on his phone. It was from his mom, a simple text, "I need to talk to you. Now. It's important." Jacob's heart skipped a beat, his pulse quickening as 1,000 thoughts rushed through his mind. For weeks, his mother had been distant, her eyes avoiding his whenever he tried to ask about the family's past or about the strange things he had been uncovering. He hadn't even been able to get a straight answer about the language or the journal. The feeling of being in the dark, of being shut out of his own history, gnawed at him. But now, it seemed like she was finally ready to talk, to explain the secrets she had kept hidden for so long. He rushed to her room, his breath shallow with anticipation. The door was cracked open, and as he entered, he saw his mom sitting at her desk, her back to him. Her face was pale, her hands shaking as she held something in them, a small, old pendant, identical to the one Emma had shown him weeks before. Jacob froze. For a moment, he simply stared at her, unsure of how to react. This was the first time he'd seen that pendant outside of Emma's neck, and yet here it was, sitting in his mom's trembling hands. His stomach twisted into knots, a cold wave of realization crashing over him. How did she have this? "Mom?" Jacob asked softly, his voice trembling with the weight of his fear and confusion. His mom slowly turned, her face a mask of sorrow and regret. "Jacob, there's something I should have told you a long time ago. I've kept it from you for your whole life, because I thought I was protecting you." She took a deep breath, her hands gripping the pendant tighter. "I never wanted you to know about it, but it's too late now. You're already caught up in it." Jacob's heart hammered in his chest. He had waited for this moment, but nothing could have prepared him for the words that came next. Your father isn't who you think he is." The words hung in the air like a bomb, and for a long moment, Jacob couldn't speak. His mind went blank as the shock of her revelation sunk in. "What do you mean? What are you saying?" he stammered, barely able to comprehend the gravity of her statement. His mother's eyes were filled with tears now, her voice barely above a whisper. "Jacob, your father, he's the reason all of this started. The language, the journal, the threats, you're in danger because of him. He's part of something much darker, something he's been hiding from you your whole life." Jacob's world felt like it was crumbling around him. His father, the man who had always been his rock, his source of stability, was at the center of all this chaos. It didn't make sense. "No," Jacob muttered, shaking his head. "You're wrong. My dad would never." But his mother's eyes were unflinching. "He's been hiding his past from you. The pendant Emma showed you, the journal, the language, it's all connected to him. He had to know what was really happening, had to understand why his family was involved, and why he had been dragged into this." But the fear gnawed at him. The idea of losing everything, the safety of his friends, the stability of his home, his very future, was too much to ignore. He couldn't let it happen. But he also knew that backing down, turning his back on the truth, would haunt him forever. Was it worth the risk? Was it worth potentially losing his family, his friends, his life just to uncover a secret that may not even make sense? The tension between these choices pulled him in two directions, each one tearing at him like a weight too heavy to bear. The more Jacob thought about it, the more he realized that the ultimatum wasn't just a threat, it was a test. Someone was watching him, waiting to see what he would do. He had no idea how far this group would go to protect their secrets, but he knew one thing: they wouldn't hesitate to hurt him if it meant keeping their power intact. And what about his father? What role did he play in all of this? Was he part of the group that was behind the language, or was he trying to break free from it? And if his father was involved in something so dangerous, what did that mean for Jacob? Did he have the strength to confront the man who had always been his hero, or was it too late for any kind of reconciliation? Could he even trust his own mother, who had kept these secrets from him for so long? The questions swirled in his mind, each one more painful than the last, each one dragging him deeper into a vortex of uncertainty. It was then that his phone rang again, breaking through his thoughts. He hesitated before answering, but when he saw the caller ID, his heart skipped a beat. It was Emma. After everything, after all the silence, she was finally calling. Jacob didn't know whether to feel relief or fear. Emma was the last person he had expected to reach out to him, especially after everything that had happened. She had been missing for days, and the fact that she was now calling him only added more layers to the mystery. What was she going to say? What did she know? And most importantly, could he trust her? Jacob, I know you've been trying to piece everything together, but you have to listen to me. Emma's voice came through the phone, shaky and urgent. You don't know the whole story. There's more to this than you think. I can't explain everything over the phone, but you need to meet me. Right now. I know you're scared, but if you want answers, this is the only way. Jacob felt a chill run down his spine. Her words only added to the storm of confusion in his mind. What did she mean by there being more to this? Had she been a part of this all along? Could he trust her? He wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that Emma, who had always been by his side, wasn't hiding something else from him. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that the lines between friend and foe were no longer clear. Everyone had a hidden agenda, and everyone seemed to be playing their own part in this twisted game. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the doorbell. It rang once, then twice, then a third time, each chime ringing louder in the silent house. Jacob's pulse quickened. Who could it be at this hour? His parents were still in their room, and his phone had been the only source of contact all day. He felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up as he slowly walked toward the front door. With every step, his heart pounded harder in his chest. Was it someone coming to confront him about the investigation? Someone from his father's past? Or worse, someone who wanted him to stop looking into the truth? When Jacob opened the door, his breath caught in his throat. Standing on the porch was Matt, his best friend, the one person he had counted on the most through all of this. But there was something different about Matt now. His face was pale, his eyes wild with fear. In his hand, he held a small, weathered envelope, sealed with a symbol Jacob recognized immediately, the same symbol from the journal. Jacob felt the ground beneath him shift as the words spilled from Matt's mouth in a hurried, frantic whisper. Jacob, I don't know who else to turn to. They're coming for us, and we need to leave. Right now. I've been working with them all along. The revelation hit Jacob like a punch to the gut. Everything he thought he knew, everything he had believed about his friends, his family, had just shattered in one cruel, unexpected moment. Jacob's blood ran cold as Matt's words hit him like a sledgehammer. I've been working with them all along. The weight of those words pressed down on him, suffocating him. His best friend, his closest ally, had been part of this twisted web all along. Matt, the one person Jacob thought he could trust without question, had been playing a role he hadn't even known existed. His mind raced as he tried to process what Matt had just admitted. Was this a joke? Was Matt lying? Or worse, had he been manipulated too? Every possibility seemed more disturbing than the last, and with each passing second, the world around Jacob seemed to tilt further into chaos. The urgency in Matt's eyes told Jacob this was no game. His friend wasn't here for an explanation or a confession, he was here with a warning. Jacob, you have to listen to me. I didn't want any of this. Matt stopped abruptly, looking around nervously as if the walls themselves were listening. They've been tracking me, watching my every move. It's not just your dad and that group, it's bigger than that. They're everywhere, Jacob. The ones you think you can trust, the ones you've been relying on, they've all been part of this thing. They've been using us, using you. Jacob's heart pounded in his chest as the implications of Matt's words began to sink in. The stakes weren't just about the language anymore. This wasn't just some secret society hidden in the shadows, a relic of the past trying to protect an ancient power. No, this was a global conspiracy, a machine so vast that it made everything Jacob thought he understood feel like a child's puzzle. His mind churned with disbelief and fear. If it was true, if what Matt was saying was even remotely accurate, then Jacob had been a pawn in a game that spanned countries, decades, perhaps even centuries. And the worst part was that he still didn't understand what it all meant. How far does this go, Matt? Jacob asked, his voice hoarse with the strain of trying to comprehend what was happening. His stomach twisted in knots, his hands clammy. Who else is involved? What do they want with me? With all of us? Matt ran a hand through his disheveled hair, his expression haunted. They've been pulling the strings all this time, Jacob. Your father isn't just part of the group, they've made him one of their leaders. He's been working with them to keep this language, this power, under their control. And now, they think you're the key to unlocking it all. Matt's voice dropped to a whisper. The truth is, they don't just want the language, they want the power it holds. And you're the only one who can give it to them. Jacob's breath hitched in his throat as he tried to make sense of the revelation. His father, his hero, wasn't just an unwilling participant, he was leading this conspiracy. Everything Jacob had uncovered until now, everything he'd been told, was a lie. His entire life had been a carefully constructed facade, and now it was crumbling faster than he could hold on to it. The fear that had been simmering in the background began to boil over. The danger was no longer distant, it was in his home, in his family, in the people he trusted most. What do you mean, I'm the key? What does that even mean? Jacob asked, his voice shaking. Matt looked down, clearly struggling with his next words. You don't remember, do you? The day your dad took you to that place, the ruins, the old church? I was there too, Jacob. I saw it. The way your father spoke to them, the way they looked at you. They think you have something inside you, something that's tied to the language. They think you can unlock it. But they're wrong. They don't know everything. And I'm not sure you do either. Jacob's head spun as Matt's words continued to unravel the fabric of everything he thought he understood. He remembered the trip to the ruins, but it had always seemed like just another strange family excursion, nothing more. But now, in light of what Matt was saying, it felt like a memory he had pushed aside, a memory that, perhaps, held the key to everything. What had his father done? What had he promised? And why was Jacob now at the center of this terrifying storm? Suddenly, the door slammed open behind them, and Jacob's mother appeared in the doorway, her face as pale as a ghost. She was breathing heavily, her eyes wide with fear. You need to get out of here, Jacob. Now. They're coming. Jacob barely had time to react before she continued, her voice trembling. They've found us. It's all falling apart. Your father, he's in over his head. You need to go, Jacob. Now. Matt grabbed Jacob's arm urgently, pulling him toward the back door. This is it. We don't have time to explain. They know we're here. They've known for days. Jacob didn't know what to think anymore. His mind was a whirlwind of confusion and fear. His father, his mother, his best friend, they were all tangled in a web of lies, betrayals, and secrets that he had only just begun to scratch the surface of. Who could he trust now? The world he had known, his family, his friends, was nothing more than a series of masks, each one hiding the truth from him. And the deeper he dug, the more dangerous it became. He could hear footsteps outside, heavy and deliberate, the sound of people closing in. They were coming. They had found him. The same people who had been pulling the strings, manipulating everyone he loved, were now hunting him down, determined to force him to unlock whatever it was they needed. The stakes were higher than ever, and the danger felt imminent. The only thing Jacob knew for sure was that he couldn't stay here. But the choice between running and facing whatever was coming wasn't easy. He didn't know who to trust anymore. Was Matt lying to him? Was his mother hiding more than she had already revealed? Could he even trust his own father? "Jacob, we need to go now," Matt urged, panic creeping into his voice. Jacob looked at him, torn between the desire to run and the need to understand the truth. There was no time left. Every moment, every breath, seemed to carry with it the weight of a choice he couldn't undo. Would he risk everything to uncover the truth, to stop the conspiracy, or would he run and protect the only family he had left? The door creaked open wider, and the shadows outside loomed larger. The time for decisions was over. Jacob's heart raced as he and Matt sprinted down the narrow alley behind the house, the heavy thud of boots echoing behind them. His mind was a blur, too many questions and too many lies spinning together like a tornado. He could barely process the fear in his mother's eyes when she told him to run. Could he trust her? Could he trust anyone? The shadows were closing in, the realization that his entire life had been one big lie sinking in like a weight in his chest. They couldn't hide forever. They couldn't outrun what was coming for them. Matt, despite his own panic, pulled Jacob toward an old, decrepit warehouse on the outskirts of town, an abandoned place that Jacob had passed 1,000 times but never once imagined he'd step into under these circumstances. The walls were covered in graffiti, the windows boarded up, and the air reeked of decay and rust. As they pushed open the creaking metal door, the inside was dimly lit by a few weak lights flickering overhead. The quiet buzz of electricity hummed around them like a warning. "Where are we?" Jacob whispered, his voice strained with fear and confusion. He had no idea what was going on anymore. "This is where it all started," Matt said, his voice low, almost reverent. "This is where they set everything in motion. I've been here before, but never with the knowledge you have now. Jacob, this is bigger than just us. The power behind this language isn't some myth. It's real. And if they unlock it, if they get what they want from you." He paused, his voice faltering for just a second. "Everything changes." Jacob's breath caught in his throat. "Everything changes? What are you talking about?" Before Matt could answer, the door slammed shut behind them with a force that made Jacob jump. The sound of footsteps, heavy, deliberate, echoed from the other side of the room. They weren't alone anymore. Jacob spun around, but before he could react, a voice boomed from the shadows, a voice he recognized all too well. "Jacob," his father said, stepping into the dim light, his expression colder than Jacob had ever seen. "I'm sorry it had to be like this. But you have no idea the weight of what you're about to become." Jacob's stomach turned. His father, the man he'd spent his entire life idolizing, the one he'd trusted more than anyone else, was standing before him, an enemy. The last shreds of loyalty he had to his family began to disintegrate, replaced by an overwhelming sense of betrayal. You've been part of this all along. What is this, Dad? What are you?" His father's face hardened, the veneer of calm cracking. "I'm doing this for you, Jacob. For all of us. You don't understand the full picture yet. You think this is about power. It's not. This is about survival." He stepped closer, his voice now a low whisper. "The language, the one your mother kept from you, the one you've been trying to uncover, it's more than just words. It's a key to something much bigger than any of us. And it's inside you. You are the key, Jacob. You always have been." The words were like a punch to the gut. Jacob stumbled back, his mind reeling. "What do you mean? What's inside me? What are you talking about?" Now, he was just a man, broken by the very system he had helped build. Jacob had watched him crumble, seen the weariness in his eyes when the full weight of the conspiracy finally shattered his carefully constructed facade. It was as if his father had realized, in that final moment, that the very thing he had been protecting, this world of secrets, of ancient power, had already consumed him, just as it was threatening to consume Jacob. And that realization, perhaps more than anything, left Jacob with the clearest answer of all. This wasn't about power. It was about control, yes, but deeper than that, it was about the choices we make and the forces we choose to follow. There were no winners here. No one came out unscathed. Emma, too, had been caught in this web, her face now a mask of exhaustion and regret. She had been a part of the conspiracy, yes, but not entirely willingly. Her actions, while destructive, had been motivated by a desire to protect those she loved, her family, her friends, and perhaps even herself from the consequences of the knowledge they were all exposed to. Jacob had wanted answers, but what he realized now was that the truth was often far murkier than it seemed. There was no simple line between good and evil, no clear division between right and wrong. Only people, struggling to make sense of their choices, and the paths they chose to walk. For a brief moment, as Emma looked at him, there was a flicker of something deeper than guilt. A silent plea, perhaps, for forgiveness. And Jacob, in that quiet moment, could almost hear the unspoken truth between them. Some things were too big to fix, too powerful to undo, and all they could do was keep moving forward. But as the dust settled and the sense of quiet lingered in the room, Jacob realized the one thing he hadn't fully come to terms with: he wasn't just the son of someone powerful, nor was he merely a victim of this conspiracy. He was his own person, capable of making his own choices. He could choose to break free from the grip of this ancient power, to sever the ties that had bound him to this twisted story for so long. The language, the key to everything, was still there, inside him, but the real power wasn't in the words themselves. It was in his ability to choose whether or not to wield them. Whether or not to allow the cycle of manipulation and control to continue, or to end it, once and for all. He stood there, taking it all in, his past, his present, the strange world he had uncovered, and then, with a deep breath, he made his decision. The power, for all its allure, wasn't worth the cost. He wouldn't let it define him. The people who had been part of this world, his father, Emma, Matt, would have to find their own paths. Jacob's was his to choose. And as he turned away from the darkened corner where the whispers of the language still seemed to hang in the air, he didn't look back. The weight of the world, his family's secrets, the conspiracy, the powers they had all tried to control, still lingered, but it no longer had the power to dictate who he was or who he would become. As he stepped outside, the night air was cool against his skin, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Jacob felt a sense of clarity. It wasn't peace was too simple. But it was freedom, of a sort. The world outside was vast and unknown, full of possibilities, but no longer was it a place that could be manipulated by anyone or anything. Not his father. Not the ancient language. And not the conspiracy that had nearly swallowed them all whole. But as Jacob walked away, the lingering question stayed with him, like a shadow at the edge of his mind. Was it truly over? Had the language been locked away, never to be used again? Or had he just opened the door to something far more dangerous, something that would continue to haunt him, to call to him, just when he thought he had left it behind? The whispers he had once heard were silent now, but Jacob couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere, deep beneath the surface, something still waited. And in the back of his mind, he knew one thing for certain: the story was never truly finished. It had only just begun. As the screen faded to black, the final haunting words echoed in the silence. "You're not free yet, Jacob. Not by a long shot." And then, with that lingering uncertainty, the credits rolled, leaving the audience to question everything they had just witnessed, the weight of the mystery, and the unsettling realization that some things, some stories, never truly end.